When a black entrepreneur stepped onto the stage, no one expected him to dismantle every stereotype in under 5 minutes. But his response didn't just silence the host, it left an entire nation speechless. Subscribe to the channel and follow along to see how this powerful story unfolds. Let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? The stage was set. The bright lights of the studio gleamed as the audience settled into their seats, eagerly anticipating the next segment of the popular talk show American Voices. The host, a well-known figure in the media world, had built a reputation for his sharp tongue and no-holds-barred interviews. Tonight's guest was Marcus Johnson, a self-made black entrepreneur who had risen from humble beginnings to build a multi-million-dollar tech empire. His story was one of resilience, innovation, and breaking barriers, but the host had other plans for the interview. As Marcus walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. Dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, he exuded confidence and calm. He shook the host's hand and took his seat, ready to discuss his journey and the impact of his company, InnovateX, on the tech industry. But within minutes, it became clear that the host had no intention of letting Marcus share his story without a fight. The host began with a seemingly innocent question. Marcus, your success is undeniable, but some critics say you've had it easier because of diversity initiatives. How do you respond to that? Marcus paused, his expression calm but his eyes sharp. He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady as he replied, I appreciate the question, but let's be clear. My success isn't the result of handouts or lowered standards. It's the result of hard work, sacrifice, and an unwavering belief in my vision. Diversity initiatives exist to level the playing field, not to give anyone an unfair advantage. The host smirked, clearly unsatisfied with the answer. He pressed further, his tone growing more confrontational. But don't you think programs like affirmative action create resentment? Some people feel like they're being passed over because of their race. The audience shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension in the air. Marcus, however, remained composed. He took a deep breath and responded. Affirmative action isn't about excluding anyone. It's about addressing systemic inequalities that have existed for generations. When you come from a community that's been historically marginalized, you don't start at the same starting line as everyone else. These programs are about giving people a fair shot, not a free ride. The tension in the studio was palpable as the host leaned forward, his tone dripping with skepticism. He had clearly come prepared to challenge Marcus, and his next question was designed to provoke. Marcus, let's talk about your company. InnovateX has been accused of prioritizing diversity over merit. How do you respond to claims that you're hiring people based on their race rather than their qualifications? The audience collectively held their breath. The question was a direct attack, insinuating that Marcus's success and the success of his company were not earned but handed to him because of his race. It was a narrative all too familiar to black entrepreneurs and professionals, a narrative that undermined their achievements and perpetuated harmful stereotypes. The host's smug expression made it clear he was expecting Marcus to stumble, to get defensive, or to falter under the weight of the accusation. But Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, his calm demeanor unshaken. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, his piercing gaze locking onto the host's. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but carried an undeniable weight. Let me ask you a question, Marcus began, his tone measured but firm. When you look at a room full of white executives, do you ever question whether they earned their positions? Or do you assume they're there because they're the most qualified? The host hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the question. He opened his mouth to respond, but Marcus didn't give him the chance. The truth is, Marcus continued, people of color are constantly held to a higher standard. We have to work twice as hard to prove ourselves, and even then, our success is often attributed to something other than our abilities. So, when you ask me if I'm prioritizing diversity over merit, what you're really asking is whether people of color are capable of being just as qualified as anyone else. And the answer is yes, we are. The audience erupted into applause, but Marcus wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his voice rising with passion and conviction. You want to talk about merit? Let's talk about the fact that I built InnovateX from the ground up, with no investors, no connections, and no safety net. Let's talk about the fact that my company has created thousands of jobs and revolutionized an entire industry. Let's talk about the fact that I've earned every single accolade and every dollar in my bank account. And let's talk about the fact that I'm not an exception. I'm one of countless black entrepreneurs, innovators, and leaders who are breaking barriers and changing the game every single day. By this point, the host was visibly shaken. His usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by a look of stunned silence. The audience, however, was electrified. They rose to their feet, cheering and clapping as Marcus delivered his final words. So instead of questioning whether I deserve to be here, maybe we should be asking why there aren't more people like me in this room. Because until we address the systemic barriers that hold us back, we're not just limiting the potential of Black entrepreneurs, we're limiting the potential of this entire country. This moment marked the turning point of the interview. What had started as an attempt to undermine Marcus's achievements had backfired spectacularly. Instead of defending himself, Marcus had flipped the script, exposing the biases and double standards that people of color face every day. His response wasn't just a defense of his own success, it was a powerful indictment of a system that too often dismisses and devalues the contributions of Black professionals. The host, for perhaps the first time in his career, was left speechless. The audience, meanwhile, was on its feet, giving Marcus a standing ovation. It was a moment that would be replayed, shared, and discussed for weeks to come, a moment that left America in shock and forced the nation to confront uncomfortable truths about race, equity, and opportunity. The energy in the studio was electric. Marcus Johnson had already dismantled the host's loaded questions with poise and precision, but what came next would cement the interview as a defining moment in television history. The audience, sensing the shift in power, leaned forward in their seats, hanging on every word. The host, visibly flustered, tried to regain control, but it was too late. Marcus had the floor, and he wasn't done. As the applause from his previous response began to die down, Marcus stood up from his chair. It wasn't an act of aggression but one of authority, a physical manifestation of the power and conviction in his words. He stepped slightly forward, his gaze sweeping across the audience before landing squarely on the host. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on him. "You want to talk about merit?" Marcus began, his voice calm but carrying an edge that demanded attention. "Let's talk about the fact that I built InnovateX from the ground up, with no investors, no connections, and no safety net. I started with nothing but an idea and a determination to succeed. While others were handed opportunities, I had to create my own. And I did." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The audience was spellbound, their silence a testament to the power of his message. Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger with each sentence. "Let's talk about the fact that my company has created thousands of jobs, not just in tech but in communities that have been overlooked and underserved for decades. Let's talk about how InnovateX has revolutionized an entire industry, not because of my race, but because of my vision, my team's talent, and our collective hard work." The host shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly unprepared for the force of Marcus's rebuttal. But Marcus wasn't speaking to the host anymore, he was speaking to America. "Let's talk about the fact that I've earned every single accolade, every dollar in my bank account, and every ounce of respect I've gained in this industry. No one handed me anything. I fought for it. I earned it. And I'm proud of it." Then came the mic drop moment, the line that would echo across social media, news outlets, and dinner tables for weeks to come. Marcus took a step closer to the host, his voice steady but filled with passion. "And let's be clear, I'm not an exception. I'm one of countless Black entrepreneurs, innovators, and leaders who are breaking barriers and changing the game every single day. But you don't hear about us because the narrative is always the same, questioning whether we deserve to be here, whether we've earned our place. Well, I'm here to tell you, we have. And until this country stops doubting us and starts investing in us, we're not just limiting the potential of Black entrepreneurs, we're limiting the potential of this entire nation." The room erupted. The audience leapt to their feet, their applause thunderous and unwavering. Some cheered, some wiped away tears, and others simply stood in awe of the moment they had just witnessed. The host, for perhaps the first time in his career, was completely speechless. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, he simply nodded, a rare moment of humility from a man known for his arrogance. Marcus, however, wasn't looking for applause or validation. He turned to the audience, his expression a mix of determination and hope. "This isn't just about me," he said, his voice softer now but no less powerful. "It's about all of us. It's about creating a world where everyone, regardless of their race or background, has the opportunity to succeed. And it starts with conversations like this. Honest, uncomfortable, but necessary conversations." With that, Marcus turned and walked off the stage, his head held high. The audience continued to cheer, their applause following him as he exited. The host, still seated, looked out at the crowd, his usual bravado replaced by a look of quiet reflection. It was a moment that transcended the confines of the studio, a moment that would spark conversations, debates, and movements across the country. Marcus Johnson hadn't just defended his success. He had challenged an entire nation to confront its biases and rethink its assumptions. And in doing so, He had delivered a mic drop moment that would leave America in shock, and, perhaps, on the path to change. As Marcus Johnson walked off the stage, the studio was still buzzing with energy. The audience, many of whom were on their feet, continued to applaud, their cheers echoing through the room. The host, usually quick with a retort or a witty remark, sat in stunned silence, his usual confidence replaced by a rare moment of introspection. The weight of Marcus's words hung heavy in the air, leaving an indelible mark on everyone present. The show cut to a commercial break, but the impact of the interview was far from over. Behind the scenes, producers scrambled to process what had just happened. Social media managers, sensing the viral potential of the moment, began clipping key segments of the interview to share online. Meanwhile, the audience members, still reeling from the emotional intensity of Marcus's words, pulled out their phones to share their reactions with the world. By the time the show returned from the break, the hashtag #Marcus Johnson was already trending on Twitter. Clips of the interview were being shared thousands of times, with captions like, "This is the most powerful interview I've ever seen," and "Marcus Johnson just schooled America." Celebrities, politicians, and everyday Americans alike weighed in, many expressing admiration for Marcus's eloquence, courage, and unwavering conviction. One viral tweet read, "Marcus Johnson didn't just defend himself, he spoke for an entire community. This is what leadership looks like." Another said, "That interview was a masterclass in how to handle ignorance with dignity." Marcus Johnson is a hero. Even those who had never heard of Marcus before were moved by his words, with many calling for the full interview to be shown in schools and workplaces as a lesson in resilience and integrity. The host, for his part, seemed visibly shaken. When the cameras came back on, he struggled to regain his composure. "Well," he began, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "That was, certainly a powerful conversation. Thank you, Marcus, for sharing your perspective. I think we all learned something tonight." But Marcus's impact extended far beyond the studio. In the days that followed, the interview became a cultural touchstone, sparking nationwide conversations about race, entrepreneurship, and systemic inequality. News outlets ran segments analyzing Marcus's responses, with many commentators praising his ability to dismantle stereotypes and challenge biases with such grace and power. Marcus's company, InnovateX, saw a surge in interest. Job applications from diverse candidates flooded in, and investors who had previously overlooked the company now clamored to be part of its success. Marcus, however, remained focused on his mission. In interviews and public appearances, he used his newfound platform to advocate for systemic change, calling for greater investment in underserved communities and more opportunities for Black entrepreneurs. Perhaps the most profound impact of the interview was the way it resonated with people on a personal level. Marcus received thousands of messages from young Black entrepreneurs who saw themselves in his story. "You showed me that it's possible," one message read. "Thank you for paving the way." Another said, "I've never felt so seen or so inspired. You've given me the courage to keep going." For Marcus, these messages were the most rewarding part of the aftermath. "This isn't about me," he said in a follow-up interview. "It's about all of us. It's about creating a world where everyone, regardless of their race or background, has the opportunity to succeed. And if my story can inspire even one person to chase their dreams, then it's all worth it." The host, in a rare moment of humility, also reflected on the interview. In a tweet posted later that night, he wrote, "I'll admit, I went into that conversation with my own biases. Marcus Johnson challenged me to think differently, and for that, I'm grateful. It was a small but significant acknowledgement, one that hinted at the possibility of growth and change." As the weeks turned into months, the interview continued to reverberate. It was cited in discussions about diversity and inclusion in corporate America, referenced in speeches by politicians and activists, and even taught in classrooms as an example of effective communication and leadership. Marcus Johnson had become more than just a successful entrepreneur. He had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and the power of speaking truth to power. And America, for once, was listening. The interview had left the nation in shock, but it had also sparked a much-needed conversation, one that, thanks to Marcus's words, had the potential to lead to real and lasting change. The moment Marcus Johnson walked off the stage, the ripple effects of his interview began to spread far beyond the confines of the TV studio. Within minutes, clips of the interview started circulating on social media, each one more powerful than the last. The hashtag #Marcus Johnson began trending on Twitter, and by the end of the night, it had become one of the most talked about topics in the country. The first wave of reactions came from viewers who had watched the interview live. Many took to Twitter to express their awe and admiration. One viral tweet read, "Marcus Johnson just schooled America on what it means to be a Black entrepreneur in this country. We need more voices like his." Another said, That interview was a masterclass in how to handle ignorance with dignity. Marcus Johnson is a hero. The comments section of the show's YouTube channel was flooded with messages of support, with viewers praising Marcus for his poise, intelligence, and unwavering conviction. Celebrities and public figures quickly joined the conversation. Prominent Black leaders, such as politicians, activists, and entertainers, shared the interview with their followers, many adding their own commentary. A well-known actor tweeted, "Marcus Johnson didn't just defend himself, he spoke for an entire community. This is what leadership looks like." A prominent civil rights activist posted, "This interview should be required viewing for anyone who questions the value of diversity and inclusion." Even white allies in positions of power shared the clip, with one CEO writing, "Marcus Johnson's words are a wake-up call for corporate America. We need to do better." The media frenzy was immediate. News outlets ran headlines like, "Marcus Johnson's powerful response leaves America speechless," and "Black entrepreneur delivers mic drop moment on national TV." Talk shows and podcasts dissected the interview, with hosts and guests analyzing Marcus's responses and the broader implications of his words. Op-eds flooded major publications, with writers praising Marcus for his ability to dismantle stereotypes and challenge systemic biases. One columnist wrote, "Marcus Johnson didn't just defend his success, he exposed the double standards that people of color face every day. His words should be a catalyst for change." But the reaction wasn't limited to praise and admiration. The interview also sparked heated debates. On conservative talk shows, some commentators pushed back against Marcus's message, arguing that his success was an exception rather than the rule. "This is just one man's story," one pundit said. "We can't generalize his experience to the entire Black community." These comments, however, were met with swift backlash. Social media users pointed out that Marcus himself had addressed this very point during the interview, emphasizing that he was one of countless Black entrepreneurs breaking barriers every day. The interview also resonated deeply with everyday Americans, particularly within the Black community. For many, Marcus's words were a source of inspiration and validation. Young Black professionals shared stories of their own struggles, expressing how Marcus's message had given them the courage to keep pushing forward. "I've been told so many times that I only got my job because of diversity initiatives," one woman tweeted. "Hearing Marcus Johnson speak reminded me that I earned my place, and no one can take that away from me." Parents and educators also took notice. Many shared the interview with their children and students, using it as a teaching moment. "This is what it means to stand up for yourself with grace and intelligence," one teacher wrote. Marcus Johnson is a role model for the next generation. Even the host of the show, known for his confrontational style, was forced to acknowledge the impact of the interview. In a rare moment of humility, he took to social media to address the backlash. "I'll admit, I went into that conversation with my own biases," he wrote. "Marcus Johnson challenged me to think differently, and for that, I'm grateful." While some criticized the host for his initial line of questioning, others praised him for acknowledging his mistakes and using the experience as an opportunity for growth. By the end of the week, the interview had become more than just a viral moment, it had become a cultural phenomenon. Marcus Johnson's words were quoted in speeches, referenced in meetings, and even printed on posters and t-shirts. His message of resilience, equity, and the importance of challenging systemic barriers resonated with people from all walks of life, sparking a nationwide conversation about race, opportunity, and the American dream. For Marcus, the overwhelming response was both humbling and motivating. "This isn't just about me," he said in a follow-up interview. "It's about all of us. It's about creating a world where everyone, regardless of their race or background, has the opportunity to succeed. And if my story can inspire even one person to chase their dreams, then it's all worth it." America had been left in shock, but it had also been left with a challenge to listen, to learn, and to do better. And thanks to Marcus Johnson, the nation was finally ready to have that conversation. The interview that had left America in shock didn't just fade into the background as another viral moment. Instead, it became a catalyst for lasting change, leaving a legacy that extended far beyond the confines of that TV studio. Marcus Johnson's words resonated deeply, sparking conversations, inspiring action, and redefining what it meant to be a Black entrepreneur in America. In the weeks and months that followed, Marcus became a sought-after speaker, not just for his business acumen but for his ability to articulate the challenges and triumphs of Black professionals. He was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and corporate events, where he continued to advocate for systemic change. His message was consistent: diversity and inclusion weren't just moral imperatives, they were economic ones. "When we invest in underserved communities and break down barriers," he often said, "we unlock potential that benefits everyone." Marcus's company, InnovateX, saw a surge in interest and growth. Job applications from diverse candidates increased by 40%, and the company's stock price soared as investors recognized the value of its mission-driven approach. Marcus used this momentum to launch new initiatives, including a mentorship program for aspiring Black entrepreneurs and a venture fund dedicated to supporting minority-owned startups. Success isn't just about building a company, he explained. It's about building a legacy that lifts others up. The interview also had a profound impact on corporate America. Many companies, inspired by Marcus's words, began to reevaluate their diversity and inclusion policies. Some launched training programs to address unconscious bias, while others committed to hiring more people of color for leadership roles. A major tech company even reached out to Marcus to consult on their diversity initiatives, a move that was widely praised as a step in the right direction. But perhaps the most significant part of Marcus's legacy was the way his story inspired individuals. Young Black entrepreneurs, in particular, saw themselves in Marcus's journey. His story became a beacon of hope, proving that success was possible even in the face of systemic barriers. Social media was flooded with stories of people who had been inspired to start their own businesses, pursue their dreams, or simply stand up for themselves in the workplace. Marcus Johnson showed me that I don't have to apologize for my success, one young entrepreneur wrote. He showed me that I belong. Marcus also became a symbol of resilience and grace under pressure. His ability to remain calm and composed during the interview, even in the face of provocative questions, was widely admired. Media outlets dubbed him the voice of a generation, and his interview was studied in communication classes as an example of how to handle difficult conversations with dignity and intelligence. The host of the show, too, was changed by the experience. In a follow-up segment, he publicly apologized for his line of questioning and committed to using his platform to amplify marginalized voices. Marcus Johnson taught me the importance of listening, he said. And I'm committed to doing better. While some criticized the host for his initial approach, others praised him for his willingness to grow and learn. As the years passed, Marcus's impact only grew. He was featured on the cover of major magazines, honored with numerous awards, and even invited to the White House to advise on economic policy. But despite his rising fame, Marcus remained grounded, always emphasizing the importance of giving back. I didn't get here on my own, he often said. And I'm not going to leave anyone behind. The interview itself became a cultural touchstone, referenced in books, documentaries, and even works of art. It was taught in schools as an example of effective communication and leadership, and it continued to inspire new generations of entrepreneurs and activists. For Marcus, the legacy wasn't just about his success, it was about the doors he opened for others. I didn't set out to be a role model, he said in a speech years later. But if my story can inspire even one person to chase their dreams, then it's all worth it. Because when we lift each other up, we all rise. America had been left in shock by Marcus Johnson's words, but it had also been left with a challenge to listen, to learn, and to do better. And thanks to Marcus, the nation was finally ready to rise to the occasion. His legacy was one of hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief that a better future was possible. And that legacy would continue to inspire for generations to come.